Welcome to Q&A with JP Jones. I'm Bub Coons, and this, of course, is our senior pastor, JP Jones. Welcome back.
You bet.
I'll be saying that a lot because we're going to do a lot of these episodes. But
okay.
Okay, big question of the day. Probably the number one, argument that non-Christians would have against God is the problem of evil and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world can there be a good God and there to be suffering in the world?
Yeah.
How do you justify? How do you rectify those?
Yeah. In fact, you use the term justify,
Yep.
not to get too heady, but in philosophy it's called theodicy,
Mm-hmm.
which is the justification of God. That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this issue, first of all, it's a huge issue. It's emotionally disturbing.
Right.
If we say we believe in a God who cares about people, loves people, and then allows just terrible things to happen, tsunamis, mass murders, child molestations, you name it. How does that all jive together? Yeah. And quite frankly, it's not only the question that, skeptics, unbelievers ask about Christianity. It's Christians ask the same questions, right? Here's the thing about trying to respond to that. It's actually a question that can be responded to rather simply, but it doesn't mean it's emotionally satisfying. Mm-hmm. So there's an answer, but the answer isn't emotionally satisfying.
Yep.
Okay, so this is one thing I've learned about a lot of questions that even I have about God,
right,
and that we talk about in theology, is you have to kind of step away a little bit to be somewhat dispassionate. So in other words, let me just look at what my options are in trying to deal with the issue of evil and suffering. Mm-hmm. And it actually works out that there's only three options. There's only three answers, and they kind of fit along the lines of your worldview. And when I use the term worldview, it's actually a term that every person has a worldview. It's the way we understand reality. It's the way we understand right and wrong.
It's all your deepest beliefs are in there.
It's the way we understand God, the afterlife, everything. Yep. And I don't want to just oversimplify, but basically there are three. One is that the universe is everything. Mm-hmm. The other is that God is everything. And then the other one is that there's both God and the universe. Mm. I'm going to get to answering your question, but I want to make a case if I can. So in the view that the universe is everything, that means we live in a closed system. Everything can be understood by what actually exists. That's the view of naturalism or atheism.
Right.
So we're just chemicals, time, random chance, and there's no transcendent truth. There's no afterlife. There's no God. There's no supernatural.
There's no choice. Really,
there's no ultimate.
There's no meaning.
There's no ultimate absolute morality.
Right.
That's this. So, if I was a person who was of this worldview, I still have to deal with the problem of evil.
You do.
But my response basically is it just exists.
Who cares? What can you do?
We're just worm food. Yeah. Life sucks and then you die.
Yeah.
And you could be a moral naturalist and wish it wasn't that way.
Right.
You could be an amoral naturalist and not care. You could be an immoral naturalist and say that's the way exactly I want it to be. Yeah. But the reality is,
neither one of those terms really exist in that system.
Exactly.
Anyway. We're making words up that don't matter.
But you can understand. So you understand my point.
I do. Yeah.
Now this view over here that God is everything, this is the worldview of Eastern religions and Eastern thought. It's known as pantheism, which is just God is everything or God is in everything. And in this view, ultimate reality isn't this physical stuff anyway. Ultimate reality is coming into that oneness with God, the whole karmic evolutions where you realize the God within you and you become one with the universe, and it's this psychic, spiritual dynamic.
So pain and suffering really isn't even real.
It's an illusion.
It's an illusion.
Yeah. So evil doesn't even really exist. Right. Now, this view, the view of that there's a God.
So neither of these two, the evil doesn't exist really. It's nothing.
Exactly.
And so you're really not even dealing.
So
with
the only
issue.
worldview, you're going somewhere because if I was actually in dialogue with someone and they asked me that question,
I thought we were.
Yeah, but I mean in a real conversation outside of church and somebody's talking. I would say the very fact that you asked that question tells me that you're already looking at the world from a God existing perspective.
Yes.
And not just God as in pantheism, but God as an infinite and personal God, the God of the Bible.
Yeah, they revealed himself.
Or at least the God of Islam, the God of
Yeah.
Judaism, and the God of Christianity. Because those are the three worldviews that hold a view that there's God and there's the universe.
Right.
So now, in the view of Christianity, in the view of the Bible, the answer is this. Yeah, evil's really evil.
Yeah.
But God didn't create the world originally evil. He created it good.
Mhm.
And everything he said was good. And then when
Very
he
good.
created human beings, it's very good.
Yeah.
But he gave free choice within his creation. And our great ancestors dropped the ball and used that free choice for evil. And so now we don't live in the world the way God originally created it. We live in an evil world. So there's evil in the world and there's evil in us.
Yeah.
And the Bible says that God, in his infinite wisdom, is using the current system to allow people the free choice to either align themselves with evil or align themselves with good, to choose to reject God or choose to follow God. And the Bible says there's coming a day, a great day of equalization. Bible actually calls it the day of judgment, where God will destroy all evil and eliminate all suffering and usher in the opportunity for life with him where there will be no evil and no suffering. But right now, evil and suffering exist for a purpose.
For his sovereign purpose. Yeah.
Is that emotionally satisfying?
No.
No. But here's what I say to people. If you don't like that answer, or if you reject that answer, by default, you're choosing either this answer or this answer.
Which gives you nothing.
So then
No
I
hope,
asked,
no
I said,
anything.
so are you a naturalist, atheist, and evil just doesn't exist, or it is what it is? Or are you a pantheist? You can't, agnosticism, saying that I don't know, that's not a position.
Yeah.
It's not.
Because you believe something anyway.
So to reject anything, you got to reject it from a vantage point. Right. So all of that to say, evil exists, but it's an anomaly to God's creation. In other words, it's not the way he originally created it. And there's coming a time when he's going to destroy it.
So those that say that, God should do something about it, well, he is ultimately. He's doing it now. And there's this period of grace for whatever his sovereign will is. Because what's the alternative if we're to wipe it out? Do I start with you? There, everyone just dies and there's nothing? Or do I actually allow a period of time to happen?
And as a follower of Jesus, I have a responsibility because the Bible actually says to me, I'm to overcome evil with good.
Yeah.
So the church of Jesus, not the fake church, real people who really know and love Jesus, they're to be people who overcome evil with good. That's why Jesus talked about to love our enemy. And he said, serve the least of these. And that's where we stand up for justice.
Right.
We should be making a stand for justice as followers of Jesus Christ, because we are in this age to be active agents of good, anticipating the final age where Jesus will eliminate all evil.
In every category, I would say, in entertainment and politics and everything, is like we got to overcome evil with good.
Yeah. So, I want to reiterate that. I can intellectualize that, and I believe it's true, and I believe it's defensible. But when I see evil and when I see suffering, it still rips me apart, and I still ask God, why?
Why to this level at least?
When are you going to do something about it? Or how can I do something about it?
Well, that's the big thing, right? A lot of us can't do something about it, and we just default it to a god or something. Maybe you're the agent that's supposed to stop that for whatever reason. So I get that. So there's an intellectual response. There's a logical intellectual response to evil. But now, like the big one, is the emotional response. As a pastor, how do you deal with it when it hits reality? When it's a person and they come to you and say, I just lost my child, or I have cancer and I'm not going to make it. And that's not, I hate it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I always am aware of is I'm a human being before I'm a pastor.
Right.
And I can understand pain.
Yeah.
I've gone through pain in my own life. I've lost loved ones.
Yeah.
I've had cancer. I've dealt with betrayal. I've had evil perpetrated against me. So I understand it.
Yeah.
And I think, as a pastor, I have to always keep before me, hey, when you understand that people have broken hearts, and you can make that heart connection, then you can earn the credibility to get to the head.
To get to the head, yeah. To get to,
Because you don't. That's you asked me the question, and we're answering it here in this kind of context. But if I was again outside this and someone really asked me,
right,
I would try to find out before I even tried to answer it. Is this person asking me, one, to just have an argument, two, because they're sincerely looking for truth, or three, they've really been hurt.
Right.
And they're asking because they've really been hurt. Because a lot of times people ask that question because they do believe in God and they actually want to love God, but they feel God let them down. And they feel they've been hurt by God. Well, you don't give an intellectual answer to someone who feels like they've been hurt by God. You try to get into their world and empathize with their pain, and then from there help them understand maybe a bigger picture.
I think that's a key thing that you just said, and I think everyone listening, that's really important to distinguish because we're not just about answering questions, right? Like Ravi Zacharias says, behind every question there's a questioner. That's who we're really trying to get to. If I just answer questions, I'm not really communicating.
Right.
So let me put that aside, and you've done this like in the last couple episodes even, is you always respond first with a question. Because if you don't, how are you going to get to know what's really going on? Right. So if hey man, is abortion wrong? If someone just says that outside, in your face, you would go, well, why are you asking me that? Now, if someone had just had an abortion and they were just mad at themselves, you could answer them very differently than just saying, yes, the Bible says it's wrong.
Yeah.
So I think that's a.
Well, I have a really good friend who's a member of our church who's a professor of apologetics, right? And apologetics is how do you answer all these questions?
Defender of the faith.
And he jokes with me, and he says, describing me, he goes, "You do jujitsu apologetics." Yeah. and I said, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, a lot of times you never even answer people's questions. Yeah. You follow up and you ask them questions to try to get at what the real question is." And to me, that's the way Jesus did it. I mean, sometimes Jesus didn't even answer questions people ask him
and they were great
because
questions.
He looked at people's hearts. And he wanted to be able to have the real conversation with people. And now, if someone has a real intellectual question, let's say it's about evil and suffering, I'd love to try to give my best answer to it. But more often than not, that's not their real question. Yeah. So you want to get what's motivating that question in the first place.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Catch you guys next time. Adios.